sharing some of the research I've been doing on this weapons manufacturer Raytheon and how thoroughly owned and controlled Raytheon is by the Jesuits. You see, it's pretty just right. It's right in their executive structure. The majority of their top executives went to Jesuit schools, and I'll show you that. Even the CEO, Thomas Kennedy, is on the board of directors at the Jesuit Boston College Chief Executives Club. If you don't know, Raytheon is one of the leaders of the Star Wars weapons and the artificial intelligence weapons. They're doing a lot of hypersonic weapon research. Raytheon is one of the leaders in missile defense. That's why they're benefiting from this stage. I think the recent events in Iran with or in Saudi Arabia, they're blaming Iran for hitting the oil field there. I bet the CIA in Saudi Arabia hit their own oil field so they could get more Raytheon funding to rebuild the infrastructure and security 10 times bigger. And they'll show you the current Secretary of Defense, Mark Esper, is a former lobbyist at Raytheon. You see, Raytheon is, they wrote a little, this is in 2018 from Raytheon Technology Today. You can see they write about all of their new AI missile targeting systems. This is like Star Wars weapons, with beams and sensors and electromagnetic rays. So I recommend you check that out. And but if you're not aware, Raytheon is very, very controlled by the Jesuits. And just some other interesting weapons contracting research. This Joe Biden's Jesuit-trained son, Hunter Biden, who went to Georgetown and spent some time with the Jesuits at the Jesuit Volunteer Corps. Hunter Biden is in the news because he invested in a Chinese hedge fund called Bohai Harvest, which is investing in mass surveillance technology to spy on, in particular, Muslims in China, but all Chinese people. I recommend you read this Intercept article. It's interesting because Hunter Biden went to Jesuit Georgetown. Here's the post I made here on Raytheon. I just want to share some of the research that I found on this company because it's pretty overwhelming how controlled Raytheon is by the Jesuits and the Catholic Church. And you see on the board of directors, you got former generals, former Navy admirals. It's all over the place. Where was this here? Okay. Yeah, so I'm just going to start from what I read here. So you see the Raytheon company, and I'm going to do future videos on this. I've also done in-depth research on Lockheed Martin and L3 Harris Technologies and how these two companies, Lockheed and L3 Harris Technologies, are also just as controlled by the Jesuits as Raytheon is. And L3 Harris Technologies is making the Stingray devices for the police departments and all the federal agencies. These Stingrays are now been deployed all over the Western world, but Stingrays are site simulators. So now the police can drive in front of your house and download everything remotely off of every single electronic device in your house. So it violates the Fourth Amendment pretty clearly. But I say the Raytheon company is a very effective weapons manufacturer for the Jesuits in the Vatican. The American-based company primarily makes weapons for the Black Pope's Army. That's the U.S. Army. And that's why so many U.S. Army generals go to Jesuit Georgetown, because it is the Black Pope's Army. But Raytheon also finances the, quote, enemies of the U.S. and the bad guys, the quote, the bad guys that the U.S. is supposedly looking for, which leads towards an endless cycle of war whereby Raytheon's products of death are in high demand. And you see, supposedly the Iran and the U.S. are enemies, yet Iran named their new missile defense system after a Raytheon machine gun, the Phalanx. The Iranians' defense system, the Kaman, has been dubbed the Iranian Phalanx, which the Phalanx is the name of a Raytheon submachine gun. In this independent article here, this journalist said he found fragments from spent missile casing lying in the basement of a bombed-out Islamist base in eastern Aleppo, Syria last year. And the Islamist fighters were using Raytheon weapons. You see, this is sourced right here. Interesting, Raytheon, the Hughes Aircraft Co. was sold to Raytheon back in 1997. And what was the guy's name? Howard Hughes had a Jesuit handler. What was it? Richard Mayhew? I'll think of that. Do I have that tab open here? Give me a second. Howard. Give me a second. I forget. There's a really interesting connection to Howard Hughes and Holy Cross. Robert Mayhew. Robert Mayhew was the Jesuit handler of Howard Hughes. So he was the chief executive of operations for the industrialist Howard Hughes, and he went to Jesuit Holy Cross in Georgetown. So I'm going to say Robert Mayhew probably was the one who engineered the sale of the Hughes Aircraft Company to Raytheon. But just going into here, so for corporate welfare, Raytheon received just in 2017 $14.5 billion from the United States government alone. And you see here the current U.S. Secretary of Defense, Mark Esper. This guy is a Jesuit puppet, and I'll show you that because this guy was literally sucking up to Tim Kaine at his confirmation hearing. He literally says, "Oh, I wish I could have Tim Kaine with me here side by side to finish this hearing." Oh, I bet, you Jesuit tool. But you see the current U.S. Secretary of Defense, Mark Esper, before his current job, was Vice President of Government Relations at Raytheon. Pretty big conflict of interest. And I reposted a couple videos ago a video of Mark Esper and Jesuit trained at Georgetown, Joseph Dunford, warmongering, saying we need to send more American troops into Saudi Arabia and we need to give Raytheon more military contracts to build missiles for the Saudis and to protect the Saudi oil fields. But while Raytheon Secretary of Defense Mark Esper was recognized as a top corporate lobbyist by The Hill magazine in 2015 and 2016, then I say here is a video of Mark Esper spinelessly sucking up to lay Jesuit Tim Kaine at his confirmation hearing. And I quote here this is from a Time magazine article. This is what Tim Kaine said about the Jesuits. That high school experience with the Jesuits was a key part of my transition into adult life where instead of just accepting the answers of my parents or others, I've been a person who wants to go out and find the answers on my own, and the Jesuits get credit for that, end quote, Kaine says. Then the Time article continues, after being admitted to Harvard Law School, Kaine took a year off to volunteer with the Jesuits at a vocational school in El Progreso, Honduras. So Tim Kaine is literally a lay Jesuit. He was educated at like two or three Jesuit schools, toured Honduras with the Jesuits. You see here, this was at Mark Esper's confirmation hearing. But Tim Kaine is testifying here first, and he's just saying how Mark Esper is such a great guy.
An invitation for Senator Warner and I to accompany
But I'm just going to show you here how Mark Esper just starts sucking up to Tim Kaine.
Just 20 discouraged by the resignation of Secretary Mattis. And what we've hoped for is a
and he's saying the devout Catholic, the warrior monk, Secretary James Mattis, like a devout Roman Catholic, was the former Secretary of Defense. And Tim Kaine's like, we're deeply saddened to see our beloved papist James Mattis leave the Defense Department, but we're very loyal and Raytheon lobbyist Mark Esper to fill his role.
Successor who could show the same level of candor and principle,
same level of treason,
and a willingness to remain independent even in the most challenging.
What a joke! Everything these guys do is told for them to do by their Jesuit masters.
I believe that Dr. Esper has those traits and would encourage all of my colleagues to support his nomination. Thank you.
Well, I bet you would,
Mr. Chair. Right there.
This is lay Jesuit Tim Kaine.
Thank you, Senator Kaine. Whether you call it that or not, I call it an excellent introduction.
Huh.
And Dr. Esper, you are recognized.
But listen to this. Mark Esper literally says, "Oh, I wish I could have Tim Kaine sit here beside me for this whole hearing." Lay Jesuit Tim Kaine.
I want to make, and your entire statement will be made part of the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wish Senator Kaine could stay here for the next couple hours.
Oh, you hear that?
The record.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wish Senator Kaine could stay here for the next couple hours.
That's how much of a puppet this guy is, Mark Esper.
Part of the record.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wish Senator Kaine could stay here for the next couple hours. Next to me.
So yeah, this guy was literally a lobbyist at Raytheon. He owns stock in Raytheon. I'll show you. As soon as this guy took office, Raytheon stock went up like $50.
And distinguished members of the committee, it is an honor and a privilege to appear before you as the President's nominee for Secretary of Defense. And I'd like to especially thank Senator Kaine for that very kind, gracious, humbling introduction. Sir, I will not let you down. You have been a leader here in the Senate.
I will not let you down, Jesuit Tim Kaine.
Sir, I will not let you down. You have been a leader here in the Senate.
Like, oh, it's just playing out exactly like my Jesuit masters told me it would.
Humbling introduction. Sir, I will not let you down. You have been a leader here in the Senate. You've been a leader because you're a father of Marine. You've always taken care of our servicemen and women. And as you mentioned, I've really enjoyed working closely with you these past couple of years, and our experience at Fort Belvoir. Again,
well, you take care of our men and women by sending them off to die in the Middle East where they don't even know who the enemy is they're fighting.
For me, that there was bipartisanship in this building on Capitol Hill, and there are leaders out there who will do the right thing, and I know you will continue to demonstrate that leadership for our servicemen and women, for your constituents, for our nation. So thank you very much. I deeply appreciate your remarks. I want to thank the president.
Okay, so I just wanted to show you that. That just shows you how much of a puppet show is going on with the current Defense Department. Mark Esper is literally sucking up to Tim Kaine, literally sucking up to him. That's not an exaggeration. Okay, but did you hear some recent headlines with Raytheon? There's some recent contracts they got. They're in line for a $3 billion contract for Japanese missile interceptors. Here's a good Business Insider article here. Here's why Raytheon could be the biggest beneficiary of the Saudi oil attack. And here's a picture of the stock. So Esper was only nominated last month to Raytheon. So here's September 23 now. Esper was nominated about a month ago. So Esper took over Raytheon about here on the stock chart. This is Raytheon stock price. So since the Raytheon lobbyist Mark Esper took office, their stock has, you see, this is trading at a little under probably 178, and now it's 204. So the stock price has literally jumped up probably like, what's that, like 15%, 20% already since he's taken office. And with this new Saudi Arabian quote crisis, there's going to be lots of Raytheon contracts coming. So this is going into some of the current chief executive structure. So here you got Thomas A. Kennedy. I knew this guy was a devout Catholic when I saw his name Kennedy, but the CEO, Thomas Kennedy, went to secular schools. But the current CEO and chairman of Raytheon, Thomas Kennedy, is on the board of governors at the Jesuit Boston College Chief Executive Club. And here's a quote from the website of Boston College, Jesuit Boston College. The board of governors for Jesuit Boston College Chief Executives Club comprises a cross-section of the city's top business leaders representing industries ranging from media to retail to finance, professional sports, and more. Under their stewardship and partnership with the Carroll School of Management, that's named after Jesuit priest John Carroll, at Boston College, the program attracts keynote speakers from the very pinnacle of industry from across the country and across the globe. And I recommend you should all go on the website of the Jesuit Boston College Chief Executives Club, because the world's elite, like all the CEOs of the world go speak there. It's not an exaggeration. All of them do. Literally all of them. Okay, but you see here on the board of governors at the Jesuit Boston College Chief Executives Club, you got Thomas A. Kennedy, chairman, CEO of the Raytheon company, right there. Okay, Raytheon is completely controlled by the Jesuits, completely. Okay. Actually, just while I have this up, this is an interesting. This guy here, Stephen Hadley's on the board of directors at Raytheon. This guy's just like a deep stater. Right? He went to Yale. I think this guy's skull and bones. Stephen Hadley was George W. Bush's national security advisor, and now he's on the board of directors at Raytheon. I believe this guy, yeah, he went to Yale. Yeah, he was classmates with Hillary Clinton at Yale. I believe this guy was in the skull and bones, Stephen Hadley. It's just an interesting connection there. But I'll show you Thomas. This guy here, the current CEO of Raytheon, is on the board of the Jesuit Boston College Chief Executives Club. That's him right there. He's a Jesuit puppet. Better believe he is. Okay, but that's the CEO and chairman. Okay, where's this photo? I had that up. So many tabs open. Yeah, I lost that. How did I lose that tab? Whatever. Okay, continuing though. So you saw a photo of Thomas A. Kennedy. He's the CEO, chairman of Raytheon. So now you got the current the chief financial officer of Raytheon also went to Jesuit Boston College. His name is Anthony Toby O'Brien, and this is interesting because Jesuit-trained Anthony O'Brien is in charge of mergers and acquisitions at Raytheon, and there's going to be an upcoming 2020 merger between Raytheon and United Technologies, which will be the biggest merger in the history of the defense industry. It's going to be like $100 billion merger. But you see the current CFO, Chief Financial Officer of Raytheon, educated by Jesuits. You see Anthony Toby O'Brien, Vice President, Chief Financial Officer of Raytheon. Okay, this is just like a summary of Raytheon. Raytheon to 27 billion sales in 2018. O'Brien provides, quote, extensive financial and operational expertise. His responsibilities include financial reporting and controls. He has merger and acquisition activity, planning, analysis, investor relations, tax and treasury. Prior to his current position, O'Brien was Vice President in Finance and Chief Financial Officer for Raytheon Integrated Defense Systems. And this guy, this Jesuit-trained Anthony Toby O'Brien, was actually nominated to his current position as Chief Financial Officer like 2 weeks ago, I think, or not even. I think it was September 12th, 2019. He has also served as Raytheon's Vice President of Finance and was the Senior Finance Executive responsible for the Raytheon Airline Aviation Service and Raytheon's international landed companies. He also provided finance support to Raytheon's businesses. O'Brien also served as Vice President and CFO of Raytheon Aircraft from 2002 to 2006 and Vice President and CFO at Raytheon Aircraft Integration from 2000 to 2002. O'Brien joined Raytheon's Finance Leadership Development Program in 1986 after receiving a bachelor's degree from Jesuit Boston College. See, he joins Raytheon immediately after his degree from Jesuit Boston College. Upon completion of the program, he held numerous finance positions of increasing responsibility in several of Raytheon's business units. Here's a photo of the current CFO of Raytheon. He's currently trained by Jesuits, Anthony Toby O'Brien. Then you got M. David Wilkins is the current Vice President of Contracts and Supply Chain. And these are key positions because Raytheon is getting all these new lucrative contracts now that their lobbyist, Mark Esper, is the Secretary of Defense. The Secretary of Defense is in charge of handing out contracts to private military contractors. So the huge conflicts of interest. And I just showed you how much of a Jesuit tool Mark Esper is. Like, he was literally, for lack of a better word, like he was sucking the dick of Tim Kaine at that hearing. Like, you know, Tim Kaine, like, there's nothing to praise about Tim Kaine. Okay, and he was calling him like an American hero. And he says, I wish I could have Tim Kaine with me here to finish out the hearing. That just shows you how much of a puppet he is. But you got M. David Wilkins is the current Vice President of Contracts and Supply Chain for Raytheon Company. Okay, you see here, and he went to Loyola Law School in Los Angeles. M. David Wilkins, Vice President in Contract Supply of Raytheon. Wilkins is responsible for maintaining an effective risk review process, providing corporate-wide policy, direction, training, and oversight of contract, supply chain, and export-import matters, ensuring that all Raytheon businesses meet acceptable performance standards in these areas. He serves as a principal interface with key government regulators regarding all contract, supply chain, export-import matters, government regulatory policy, and oversight. He also develops and implements company-wide supply chain strategies and key processes. Wilkins is responsible for the enterprise socio-economic business planning strategy and compliance relative to Raytheon supply chain. Prior to his corporate leadership role, Wilkins was Vice President of Contracts for Raytheon Network Centric Systems based in McKinney, Texas. After joining the company in January 2002, before Raytheon, Wilkins served in numerous positions with increasing responsibility in the aerospace and defense industry, including Business Unit Vice President of Contracts at Northrop Grumman Corporation, College Park, Maryland, a Business Unit Vice President of Contract Supply Chain and Pricing at the Litton Corporation, as well as Director of Supply Chain Management at Hughes Space and Communications. Wilkins has also served as a contracting officer and acquisition analyst at the Department of Defense Space and Missile Systems Center in Los Angeles and in the Air Force Contract Management Division in Anaheim, California. This guy also works for the military. Wilkins is a member of the Maryland Bar and the American Bar Association. He is a certified professional contract manager through the National Contract Management Association. He received his bachelor's degree in economics and finance from the University of New Mexico. He earned his law degree from Jesuit Loyola Law School. Then he went to Harvard also for good measure. So this is the current vice president in charge of contracts and supply chain at Raytheon, right there, Jesuit-trained David Wilkins. And this is pretty extensive. They got a lot of the key current executives of Raytheon Company are directly educated by Jesuits in key positions within the executives. This year, you got the treasurer of Raytheon, Kevin G. De Silva, went to Jesuit Georgetown University. To Kevin G. Silva is the Vice President Treasurer of Raytheon, having been appointed to this position May 2015. De Silva is responsible for issuing corporate debt and equity in capital markets, bank financing, international customer financing, foreign exchange, and global cash management and forecasting. He is also responsible for oversight of Raytheon's pension and 401k investments. Silva has more than 25 years of experience in serving increasingly senior financial roles. For Raytheon, De Silva served as Vice President and Group Financial Chief Officer for Developed Markets at Covington Place Incorporated, where he provided financial direction and strategic advice for Covington's commercial entities in Western Europe, Japan, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. He joined Covington as the Vice President and Treasurer in 2007, where he managed a global team responsible for worldwide cash, liquidity, and foreign exchange management, debt and equity funding for the company's worldwide banking and rating agency relationships. And guys, this is coming from Raytheon's own website, so this is undeniable. You can't say that the Jesuits aren't connected to Raytheon because they admit it on their own website that the majority of their executives were schooled by Jesuits. Prior to Covington, De Silva served as Vice President and Assistant Treasurer for Capital Planning and Capital Markets at Tyco International Limited. Tyco established Covington as an independent publicly traded company in 2007. Covington was acquired by Medtronic Inc. or Medtronic Place in 2015. De Silva joined Tyco International from Lucent Technologies Inc., where he served as Financial President of Worldwide Services and previously Assistant Treasurer, Capital Markets International. Silva joined Lucent in 1997 as Assistant Treasurer, Capital Markets and Corporate Finance. Prior to this, De Silva participated in a rotational leadership program in the Treasurer's Office at General Motors Corporation. Interestingly, where he assumed roles of increasingly responsibilities in overseas finance, business development, capital planning, and foreign exchange. Silva holds a bachelor's degree in science and business administration from Jesuit Georgetown University. And then he went to Northwestern. I'll show you a photo of this guy. The current treasurer of Raytheon is educated by Jesuits. And after the fact, the CEO of Raytheon is educated by Jesuits. Oh, here's his photo here. Thomas A. Kennedy. This guy's on the board of directors at the Jesuit Boston College CEOs Club. Okay, so pretty much the same thing as being educated by Jesuits. This guy's a Catholic here, Thomas Kennedy, the CEO of Raytheon. And so also you got Greg Moffitt, who's the highest lawyer at Raytheon, is also trained by Jesuits at Georgetown and Fordham. This guy, Greg Moffitt, the current senior litigation counsel at the Raytheon company, has 5 Jesuit degrees from Georgetown and Fordham universities. This is linked on his LinkedIn page here. You see Greg Moffitt. I think there's a photo of him here. See the current senior litigation counsel at Raytheon. That means he's the top lawyer at Raytheon. This guy's been a senior counsel at Raytheon. He actually, isn't that nice? He joined Raytheon right after being a United States attorney. So he's probably a great shill as a U.S. attorney, letting corporate interests off the hook, and then Raytheon's like, oh, here, come join us. That's how it works. You see here Greg Moffitt, Senior Litigation Counsel, Raytheon. You see here, I found this from a website here, Contact Out on Greg Moffitt. Greg Moffitt has an International Relations and Affairs degree at Jesuit Georgetown University Law Center. He has a doctorate of law from Jesuit Georgetown University Law Center. He has a master's in philosophy from Jesuit Fordham University. He has a bachelor's in comparative studies at Jesuit Georgetown, and he has a bachelor's in foreign service at Jesuit Georgetown. Not bad. 5 Jesuit degrees for the head lawyer at Raytheon. Not bad at all. You can see it's all going according to plan. All of these big weapons contractors are like this. They all have numerous Vatican and Jesuit connections on the board and on the executive structure. This is another interesting connection here. The former U.S. ambassador to Djibouti from 2014, that's an African country, 2014 to 2017, Tom Kelly is now Vice President for Policy and Advocacy at Raytheon International. And what a surprise, Kelly was trained by Jesuits at Jesuit Georgetown University. Okay, so I'll show you this on his LinkedIn. Former U.S. ambassador to Djibouti, Tom Kelly, Jesuit trained, is currently vice president for policy and advocacy at Raytheon International. He's former U.S. ambassador, and this guy worked in the State Department for 3 years and U.S. Consul General. So he has 2 degrees from Georgetown, not just one. Okay, but you see, before his current role as Vice President for Policy and Advocacy at Raytheon International, Jesuit-trained Tom Kelly was Vice President of Foreign Policy and National Security Affairs at Raytheon. And that's, and I found a link here from, I believe this is a Raytheon source. Oh, this is from the ambassador's own website. The ambassador, Tom Kelly, this is from September 21st, 2018. Tom Kelly is Raytheon's International Vice President for Foreign Policy and National Security Affairs. Then it just gives a little bio here. Raytheon sales $25 billion. Before joining Raytheon in 2017, Kelly served as U.S. Ambassador to the Republic of Djibouti. Assuming his duties on September 2014 as Chief of Mission, Kelly supervised U.S. government programs and activities in Djibouti, including assistance programs and annual base leasing payments in excess of $100 million to support the only enduring U.S. military presence in Africa, that being Djibouti. He interacted with Djiboutian leaders to promote U.S. interests, that's Jesuit interests, oversaw regional counterterrorism operations, those are all shams, and led the U.S. Embassy response to the refugee, quote, the refugee crisis associated with the conflict in Yemen, which Raytheon has direct blood on their hands because Raytheon is giving missile after missile and bomb after bomb to the Saudis, who are then using these Raytheon equipment against innocent Yemenis people. So Raytheon has thousands of deaths on their hands from giving arms, weapons of death directly to the Saudis. During his tenure, more than 15,000 U.S. citizens and their family members escaped the violence in Yemen through Djibouti. Well, I think he's copying this from the Raytheon website when he had a biography up there, but that's just a whitewash if there ever was one right there. I'll just highlight that joke of the last sentence. Okay, but Tom Kelly has served as acting secretary and principal deputy assistant secretary of the U.S. State Department's Bureau of Political Military Affairs from August 2011 to September 2014, running an 11-office bureau with a $41 million budget and 375 employees. He led political military negotiations in Asia, Latin America, and the Middle East, advocated for reforms of U.S. arms transfer, export controls, and unmanned aerial system policies, and restructured the Bureau to enhance its, quote, effectiveness. Kelly entered the U.S. Foreign Service in 1985. He served in U.S. missions to San Salvador, Paris, Quito, Vilnius, Buenos Aires, and Sao Paulo. In both Vilnius and Buenos Aires, he served as deputy chief of mission in the U.S. embassies in those capitals. They're Catholic countries, that's why. In Sao Paulo, Kelly served as principal officer of one of the largest U.S. consulates. One of the largest U.S. consulates in a Catholic country, again, not a surprise. He also worked in the State Department's Bureau of Economic and Business Affairs and the Office of Trade Representative from 1988 to 1990 and 1998 to 2000. Kelly earned a master's degree in developmental economics from Stanford University in 1994 and a master's degree in Latin American studies from Jesuit Georgetown University in 1984. He received his bachelor's degree from Jesuit Georgetown School of Foreign Service also in 1984. So, the connections to Raytheon are over the top. It goes back to the Jesuits very clearly. Here's another one that I had up here. Is this lady here, Tamar Brill, is a communications manager at Raytheon. She's been a communications manager at Raytheon since October 2013. And you see here, she also worked in the Office of the Secretary of Defense, which a lot of Raytheon employees do. They go back and forth from the Defense Department to Raytheon. Here, Tamar Brill, the current communications manager at Raytheon, got her Master's of Business Administration from Jesuit Georgetown University. So look at that. So she was getting her MBA from Georgetown while we're working at Raytheon. Raytheon probably financed that degree for her. That's probably if I had to take a guess. But yeah, I think that's all for this one. Let me see if I can. I'm pretty sure this guy is on the Council on Foreign Relations or the Trilateral commission too. This Jesuit puppet CEO, Thomas A. Yeah, so he's so the Raytheon CEO, Thomas Kennedy, who is on the board of governors at the Jesuit Boston College Chief Executives Club, is a member at the Council on Foreign Relations. Yeah, and here's the chairman CEO here. He became CEO in 2014. And this guy, if you can see this guy talking, like he's been on MSNBC and Fox talking about how great the Raytheon merger with United Technologies will be, which will just, eliminate competition, which all massive mergers do. And Anthony Toby O'Brien, the CFO at Raytheon, trained by Jesuits at Boston College, is in charge of mergers and acquisitions at Raytheon. So this is Kennedy's also a member of he's a member of Trump's National Security Telecommunications Advisory Committee. And he's a member of the Presidential Business Roundtable. And the Rutgers, that's Rutgers Engineering Advisory Board. Yeah, this guy's also on the CFR. I just wanted to bring that up, especially since Mark Esper, the Raytheon lobbyist, took off, became Secretary of Defense. Raytheon stock has gone up 20%. Just an obvious, case of government corruption. Let me see if anyone's in the chat here. Hey, how's it going, guys? Yeah, I'll have to look into Raytheon subsidiaries too, because the main company is so controlled by the Jesuits, and it wouldn't surprise me also if the Blackstone Group is, private equity funds like the Blackstone Group and the Carlyle Group are examples of two big-time Jesuit private equity funds which like to invest in the defense industry. They're probably also investing in Raytheon. It's a very, Nick, I recommend you guys go through the Lockheed. I've done more research on these two, three defense firms now: Raytheon, Lockheed, and L3Harris Technologies. All of them are just as overwhelmingly controlled by the Jesuits as Raytheon is. And L3, I'll just go through L3Harris really quick. There's an interesting connection to their board of directors. And these are some of the Jesuit Catholic alumni, as you can see here on the screen. And just like L3Harris, and also this is another trend in the defense industry. There's been so many mergers. Like L3Harris, this company was only created 3 months ago. It was the merger of the Harris Corporation and L3 Technologies. And then in 2020, Raytheon's going to merge with United Technologies. So just in 2 years, you'll have 4 of the biggest defense contractors in the U.S. merging together. But this is an interesting connection here because the Harris Corporation is super close with the government, very, very close. I quote a Cato Institute study. The Cato Institute isn't a great source, but I quote a Cato Institute study showing how close the Harris Corporation is with the federal government, federal and local governments. And the vice president of government relations at the Harris Corporation, Tanya Hanna, went to Jesuit Georgetown, where she has a bachelor's degree in international politics. You can just read on the screen there. Okay, and actually, the CEO of the Harris Corporation, William Bill Brown, gave $1.5 million to Catholic University, donated from the Harris Corporation, now L3Harris Technologies. This is the company making the Stingray devices. This is an interesting connection here. This former U.S. Army General, Peter Chiarelli, is on the board of directors at L3Harris Technologies. You see here, General Peter Chiarelli has been a member of the L3Harris predecessor board since 2012 and serves on our chair ad hoc committee. And Peter Chiarelli went to Jesuit Seattle University and Catholic Sal Virginia University, and he served as the Vice Chief of Staff of the U.S. Army from 2008 to 2012, and he served as commander of the multinational corps in Iraq under Jesuit-trained at Georgetown, George W. Casey Jr., who is now on the board of directors at Jesuit Georgetown That's George W. Casey Jr., and has his own hedge fund called the Minnow Group LLC. Peter Chiarelli. So think about that. You have the two commanders of the multinational corps in Iraq were led by Jesuit puppet generals. That should tell you something. But yeah, this is just an interesting connection from the military, like because all these defense firms have ex-military on their boards of directors, but this guy was a Jesuit-trained ex-military. So I recommend you guys go through this research. And I'm also, Boeing is another company I'm going to do a post on, because Boeing is very, very controlled by the Jesuits. The Export-Import Bank is actually called the Bank of Boeing, because they subsidize Boeing so much. I recommend Street State. Oh, who's Lynn Duggal, Vice President? Yeah, that's a good connection there, and good. There's a lot of interesting connections to the board of directors at Raytheon too. I think I had one open here. Where was this? Give me a second. I found a couple Catholic connections to the Raytheon board as well. There was this investor.raytheon.com. This lady here, I think, was Catholic, Lalita A. Long. She's been a director of Raytheon since 2015. 32-year career in the Department of Defense and Intelligence community, served in various positions. Served as the director of National Geospatial Intelligence Agency from 2010 to 2014. 2006 to 2010, Ms. Long served as Deputy Director of the Defense Intelligence Agency and the Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Policy Requirements and Resources from 2003 to 2006. Currently, Ms. Long serves on the Board of Directors of the Cast Corporation and Nobis Inc. She is a member of the Board of Advisors of Virginia Polytechnic Institute and State University School of Public and International Affairs. I'm pretty sure this lady here went to the Catholic University of America. Give me a second here. Yeah, Catholic University School of Engineering. Right there. Catholic University School of Engineering. So yes, Lalita Long is a Catholic. She's an intelligence connection to the Raytheon board, National Geospatial Agency, Defense Intelligence Agency. There's a few interesting Raytheon connections like that. I know this William R. Spivey guy is also, I think this guy went to Catholic Duquesne. Mr. Spivey has been a director of the Raytheon company since 1999, served as President and Chief Executive Officer of Luminant Inc. from 2000 to 2001. Prior to joining Luminant, Mr. Spivey served as Group President, Network Products Group at Lucient Technologies from 97 to 2000, as Vice President, Systems Components Group at AT&T Corporation from 94 to 97, and Group Vice President and President of Teletronics Development Company for Teletronics Inc. from 91 to 94. I think this guy here, William R. Spivey, is Catholic educated. Yeah, Duquesne University. You went to Duquesne. And Duquesne University is a private Catholic university in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. You guys, there's a photo of William Spivey's mansion in Maryland on this link here. You see, not too shabby. The Raytheon executives clearly have it tough, hey? Like with this house. Like, oh man, can't imagine the struggle he must have to go to just to the 9-to-5 grind. What a joke. That's another thing too. There was actually a hearing. Elizabeth Warren is a puppet, but when she was questioning Mark Esper, she actually got Mark Esper to say at the Senate hearing that he is not. Mark Esper admitted that he still owns Raytheon stock while being the Secretary of Defense. So expect Raytheon to get way more contracts in the next couple of years. Yeah, that's probably all for this one, guys. Well, just for reading material on Jesuit involvement in World War I, a good book would be Edmund Paris's book, The Secret History of the Jesuits. That was published by Chick Publications, I think, 1983. That would be a good one. There's an interesting little. Actually, I have a few. I have some World War I information on my blog here too. One post I recommend you. One post I recommend you check out is if you go into the search bar, type in Foch. Ferdinand Foch was the head Allied commander during World War I. But I post a Catholic article from an article from the National Catholic Welfare Conference from 1921. But the head Allied commander during World War I was actually given a sword of Ignatius of Loyola in 1921 at Georgetown University. Here, Ferdinand Foch says Jesuit fathers made his career a success. So, so that this shows the nature of Jesuit World War I intrigue. I've showed this before too, but the World War I, the World War I memorial in Washington has a Roman fasces on it. Where was I showed this in the video I did on the fasces. Let me see if I can find this quick. Give me a second. So I want to show you this picture. It was on Getty Images. Give me a second. This photo shows how much of like a crusade and an inquisition the First World War really was. I just want to find this really quick here. Okay, this was in the video I did on the Roman military fasces. Give me a second. Where did I put this? Okay, here it is. Yeah, so this is in Washington, D.C. See here? Sorry for the delay there.
Who died in World War I.
You see here, Washington, D.C., District of Columbia, Memorial to World War I Dead. The Great War for Civilization. You notice what's on that? It's a Roman military fasces. That's right on the supposed memorial to the dead. Because this is just telling you that the First World War was an inquisition and a crusade. And I have the Kaiser's memoirs on my archive.org page. Let me see here. Yeah, on my archive.org page, I have the memoirs of the Kaiser Wilhelm II, the leader of Germany during World War I. And there's an infamous quote here. I recommend you read this book here, The Kaiser's Memoirs. That Germany was turned into the sword of the Catholic Church during the First World War. And the Kaiser actually admits to it in his memoirs. I'm going to show you this. This will be the last thing I show you before I sign off. I just don't want the video to run on too long. Well, absolutely, yeah, those are great. Thanks for linking those books and goods. Those are all great books. I recommend. I've read William Brownlee's Secret Instruction of the Jesuits and Doiswick's Catholic Victory in 1960. I recommend those. Those other books look good too. I'd love to get the Solipsis book. I would like to. I don't believe that's in English. Is it the Monarchy of Solipsis? I have to. I'd love to, because I know Theodore. Another great book on the Jesuits you should read is Theodore Greisinger's book, The History of the Jesuits, from 1887, I believe. 1885. But Theodore Greisinger, I saw him reference the Monarchy of Solipsis in his book. Oh, fantastic! Oh, that's great to hear, Angus. If you could send a copy of that when you're done, that would be greatly appreciated. I'd pay you for that too. Okay, but I just want to show you this before we get going here. This is the leader of Germany's memoirs here. It's on page 211. Bear with me here. My computer is a little slow. 206. Okay, so here he starts talking about here. He says, Leo, so the Kaiser says, probably little is known by the general public of the friendly, trusting relationship that existed between me and Pope Leo 13th. Oh, really? I recommend you you check out, especially this part of the book. You see, sword of the Catholic Church. Okay, so this is what I want to show. I'm going to zoom in on this because this shows how like the papacy was the perpetrator behind World War I. So the Kaiser says, it was interesting to me that the Pope said to me on this occasion that Germany must become the sword of the Catholic Church. I remarked that the old Roman Empire of the German nation no longer existed and that conditions had changed, but he stuck to his words. I'm going to highlight that. Yeah, I think that's all for this one, YouTube. Just just as the main subject of this video shows, the Jesuits are completely in control of the Raytheon company. The former Raytheon lobbyist Mark Esper is the current Secretary of Defense. He was literally sucking up to lay Jesuit Tim Kaine at his confirmation hearing, and the Jesuits are in control of Raytheon through the board of directors and especially through the executives. Overwhelmingly so through the current executive structure. Yeah, that's all for this one, YouTube. Peace and love, and I'll catch you on the next one. I'm Ness.